Hello, Federal. This is EVTV.
It is.
Jack Rickard, I think.
Yes.
And you would be...
El Brano, Brian Noto.
That's right. The compadre and consigliere.
There you go.
So we're past that whole senior moment.
Yep, we made it.
We're
We're
launched. It's the Friday show.
It is.
Although it's Thursday.
It is Thursday.
I have to go bury an aunt tomorrow.
Oh, that's
Last
what
of
you
my
said. Sorry to hear
father's
that.
clan. There was 9 kids. They pretty much ran Cape Girardeau for a generation or so, and they're all gone.
Oh man, that's sad.
One of them survives, Mary in Nashville.
Oh,
she's 90 years old. And so anyway, we've been playing today, and have kind of some interesting things going on.
man, we always do.
Man, the electric vehicle thing, you know, I said there would be a backlash. It hasn't really started, but this was 2 years ago when I started talking about this happening. My fear all along was the negative that would accrue to the EV movement in a kind of a throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right. A lot of press releases, a lot of love from the press. Yeah.
So we had a lot of enthusiastic people raising hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars, egged on by the federal government with their unintended consequence of handing out hundreds of millions of dollars, and what that did to private investment, and egg that on with people that really didn't know what they were doing and didn't take the time to figure out what
didn't take time to learn.
It got very exciting. And,
yeah, it was the Wild West.
So it was the Wild West. Well, they're tumbling in groups now.
Are they going over the cliff?
And I don't mind. It's failure and success are separated by less than you might think.
Yeah, they're not on two ends of the of a line.
No,
it's not a linear function.
Really.
It's not a linear function.
I learned this as a youth. I was a swimmer, and the difference between being in the Olympics and not being in the Olympics is sometimes 3/100
right.
seconds.
Literally
as
split
I learned
seconds.
in Louisville, Kentucky, in 1968. And therein lies tale. Mark Spitz and Don Scholander went on to do very well.
To do very well, yeah, yes.
I would have another 3
just a blink of an eye.
and so there you have it. And that's often the difference. So in the period since 1968, I've actually gotten where I like failure better.
Yeah, well,
and the reason
you did something.
You always know why you failed. If you look at it honestly, you can pick it apart and pretty much figure out what you did wrong and learn from it.
Yeah, it is opportunity for learning. Yeah.
What happens if you win?
Well, I guess you don't have the slightest idea what happened.
What parts of it could you have left out next time?
That's right. It's like,
what were the important parts?
That's right. Yeah, you have no idea. Yeah.
Well, don't leave any of them out.
Don't leave any of them out. That's right. Yeah. And that's how you get superstitious, I think, like a lot of baseball players.
Yeah, that's when you start reading messages from God in cloud formations.
That's right. That's right. Don't eat a turkey sandwich on Thursday.
That's right. And you don't shave before a game.
That's right.
Because you're not sure just what part.
You're not sure that you have no idea.
You could leave out and it still work.
Yeah.
And so that's the paradox of failure and success is that failure is always better.
Yeah.
But everyone wants success.
You want success, yeah.
And mostly they want the money, which is same problems, different number of zeros.
Orders of magnitude.
Astounded how little it can change your life. And so anyway, but here we are, and they're dropping like flies. Of course, we announced last week, Bright Code, was it?
Bright, yeah, Bright. Yeah,
shut down operations. Fisker, of course, has shut down their assembly line.
Yeah, they're not assembling any volts right now.
And that's very peculiar. We'll get to that in a minute. Volt shut down their assembly line. But they're not, GM's not out of business, but Brightcove's pretty much gone.
I think so, yeah.
Fisker's the walking dead. Monday of this week, a company called Azure Dynamics announced that they are applying for coverage under the Companies Creditors Adjustment Act.
Something, huh? Whew.
In Canada, that means bankruptcy court.
That's right, because they're in Canada. Because we had that intern, Tony Bagnola, was here for a while.
Anthony
He went there.
was here for a couple weeks, and he went to work for Azure Dynamics. They laid off 125 people Monday. I think they've got about 40 still in the company.
Okay.
Amazing story and situation. Should be one of my favorite companies. Actually, they're one that I actually detest. And that's from some personal interactions we had with the company and trying to learn more about what they used to offer to EV people. And that was their DMOC controller and their Azure Dynamics elevator motor.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Which never really was a very good system, but a lot of people, it was kind of an AC system available several years ago.
Right.
And several people bought it and were just astounded at the not just poor product support, but a vicious, vindictive tone of these people anytime you would contact them. It wasn't just that they only sold to OEMs, but you were little and ugly and your mother dressed you funny, and how dare you call them and bother them with your silly ass little problem. And so I was not a fan of Azure Dynamics. That said, this was still kind of a good idea gone bad. They partnered, purportedly, I don't think it was such a partnership, it was kind of a partnership, with Ford Motor Company to do an electric version of the Ford Transit Connect.
Yeah, right.
And this is a 100-year-old idea, which never dies and never really gains oxygen either. And that's the local delivery van for fleets that's done with electric. And it's always the place that everyone points to, well, at least that's where electric drive
where
could
it makes
work.
sense, yeah, right.
And it would make sense. And they did a deal. Now, originally, I was told or recall Ford announcing they were going to do a partnership with Smith Electric Vehicles, which is up in Kansas City.
In Kansas City, yeah, in Missouri, yeah.
And that sort of makes sense. Smith specializes in trucks.
Yeah, right. They do trucks, yeah.
And I liked it because they're up in Kansas City, kind of almost a local company. And then that didn't happen, and Azure Dynamics was it.
They got in the deal, okay.
Now, the way Azure posed this was they're like selling to an OEM, Ford, their drivetrain to make this Ford Transit Connect.
Okay, all right.
They learned this kind of talk from General Motors. It's called barefaced lie.
That's right.
And if you practice it, you can do it without even wincing.
That's right. That's right.
And nobody should know, except everybody always does.
Yeah, they're getting in the middle of truth and a sale.
But there was a relationship. Now that they're going broke, Ford has nothing to say about it. They're deferring questions to Azure Dynamics. Azure Dynamics.
Who are they going to talk to? Yeah.
Basically, here was the deal. Ford agreed to sell them or allow them to purchase the Ford Transit Connect glider from Kayosele, Turkey.
Okay. I didn't know they're made in Turkey.
And this is another one of these weird deals I love. So in Turkey, they put windows in the back and a seat with seat belts in the back and ship them to the United States so they can avoid the chicken tax that's on light trucks.
That's right. We have a tariff on light trucks, yeah.
Right. So then it's the passenger vehicle.
Yeah.
Ships into Baltimore or somewhere. They land them, take the glass out, put metal panels in their place, and pull the rear seat.
Pull the seat. There
and
you
now
go.
It's a panel van.
Now it's a delivery van.
And Azure Dynamics was to be able to purchase these.
Okay.
Then they are also allowed to sell the Transit Connect van through some people that already sell Transit Connects, and that's the 160 Ford truck dealers.
Okay, the truck dealers. Okay.
Sell the E450s and 550s,
right,
bigger
the big trucks. Yeah.
Not really the pickup truck.
Right. the big
sell
work,
shuttles and work trucks and,
yeah.
and so on and so forth. And that's who was selling the vans. They priced it at $57,400. Which is an interesting number, because if you take the $7,500 off, which did apply to those kind of trucks,
okay, the tax
you're
credits.
at $49,900.
Okay, okay.
Here's the rub. Value proposition. One more time. Pay attention. The Ford Transit Connect varies in price from $22,035 to $23,800.
There's not a lot of options on them, I guess. Huh?
Not a whole lot.
Not a lot of options.
It's pretty basic little.
Yeah, pretty basic.
The one I would want had a diesel engine and a 5-speed transmission. Never offered in the United States.
Oh yeah, they never bring the cool cars here.
They don't.
No, they really don't. I know.
So gasoline, a little gasoline engine, and a automatic transmission. Azure Dynamics pulls that out. Well, they got it without it.
Oh yeah. Right.
Put a Borg-Warner transaxle. It was specially made to give them essentially like a front-wheel drive with a fixed ratio and a parking ball.
Oh, okay, okay.
One speed,
one
but
speed,
you know, the usual 8-to-1.
Yeah, yeah.
And they put a Siemens motor in it, and their controller.
The Azure's controller, okay.
Azure makes a controller,
yeah, yeah.
a Brusa charger, and a 28 kilowatt battery pack from Johnson Saf Controls.
Okay.
Who have alternately announced they were getting in the battery business and out of the battery business every week since we've been doing EVTV.
Yeah, yeah. They're kind of just out there around the edges.
This is a company that just wants to be where there's some money.
That's right. That's a huge company. Yeah.
And no vision at all. And so that was essentially the thing. EPA rating 53 miles. Their ads touted 80 miles on a charge.
Oh, okay, okay.
But you know, a nice little truck, air conditioning.
Okay.
They use an electric air conditioner, electric
and
vacuum
they had the power steering, electric power steering, I think. Yeah, yeah.
Nice no, it was an electric vacuum pump, vacuum power steering and brakes.
Okay.
So it was you know, not a bad effort, but they're selling at best $23,000 van for $57,400.
Doesn't make a lot of sense. You don't have to be an accountant to figure that out.
It's apparently you do, because they sold 500 of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But to what, like the usual suspects, like the government and stuff like that, kind of,
Yeah. They every one in 160 dealers sold 3 or 4.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The one they got for display.
GSA, some of them the phone companies, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody dabbles
some
in
campus,
this with 2 or 3 cars.
Yeah, try a couple
I
of
think
them out.
Siemens even bought one of them. They had the motor. I guess they wanted to see it work.
Yeah, they wanted to see their motor in something.
But they sold 500 of them, and we're getting increasing sales and improving their numbers, but they lost a lot of money. They were trying to do a secondary offering. They were a publicly traded company.
Okay, in Canada,
Canadian exchange and on the pink sheets here in the U.S. $11 a share last year, 25 cents Tuesday.
Oof.
And so
that's not good.
A bunch of people have taken a haircut investing in this company. Which is a recurring theme.
Yeah.
The Canadian Securities Commission nixed the secondary offering.
Saw it going in the tank.
Well, because they're out of money.
Yeah, right. Saw it going in the tank anyway. They're not going to let the investors get stroked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the Azure Dynamics kind of threw a fit. But to show the Canadian SEC, they basically filed for bankruptcy, laid off a bunch of people, and said, "See, it's that guy's fault.
Yeah.
We're really sad about it."
That's right. We're really sad.
You're really sad because you're really stupid.
We want another shot.
It is sad to be stupid. But oh well.
Yeah. What the heck?
Enough about me. Let's talk about you.
Wow, well, that was not good news, though.
No, it's not, and it's a recurring theme.
Yeah.
We're having one company after another, Aptera and Phoenix Motor Cars, and it's just a mature industry. with a disruptive technology, meeting a disruptive technology, and they're failing to make the case. And I think that it requires two things. One is you have to have a valid value proposition. Show me a car that I will pay that premium you have to have for it to be electric, and maybe I'll pay it.
Right. Yeah.
And right now, I've got a deposit down on a Tesla Model S. I think do 300 miles, have a completely aluminum frame sedan with some heavy electronics and geek stuff in it, and some extra room, and it handles really well because it has a really low center of gravity and a really great drivetrain with some acceleration in it, and they can elegant that thing up where it feels like an $80,000 car.
Right, that's pretty cool.
By God, I might just give them about, what would you think, maybe $80,000?
Yeah, the rest of it.
You see, wealthy, poor, and everything in between. Everybody measures constantly and without fail or reprise the value of everything they buy or sell. It's constant.
You're always evaluating it.
People are very good at it. And if you want to put out something that isn't worth the money,
you're not going to fool very many people.
You don't sell very many.
You're not going to fool very many people. No, you're not going to fool very many people.
Azure Dynamics 500 is basically a bunch of businesses sampling it.
You're right. Right. They're just making samples. Yeah.
And they sell another truck to Pearlator, who likes it and has bought a bunch of them.
Electric?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, a hybrid.
A hybrid. Okay.
A hybrid.
Okay.
But that's
wow.
So and the other part is acculturation, and so we have to have wider sales of electric cars to get the value proposition to be righter.
Right.
And we have to do that by appealing to early adopters.
That's where we are. Yeah.
Actually, that's where we want to be, Brian. The Model S, if it succeeds, and it would be the first of this series of car companies that would have succeeded.
Right.
And by the way, a market analyst went and visited the factory and saw the
at a NUMMI, you mean, or?
The forms at NUMMI to stamp the aluminum. And came back and bumped his rating on the stock to $49. Tesla's up, trading around $38 right now.
Oh, really?
And still 45% of it sold short. Again, Elon Musk is saying, guys, they're the third most shorted stock. I'm going to make sure on the NASDAQ, and I want to make sure it stings.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt going in.
It's going to hurt.
You're not going to like
make your eyes this big.
That's right. It's going to hurt going in. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. If Tesla makes it at all, this vindicates exactly my theory that if you have a desirable product at a price that can be justified, it doesn't have to be a low price. $80,000 is not lower than 32, by the way.
No, it's not.
It's not lower than 42.
Nope. No. We went to Catholic school.
It's more.
It's more. That's right.
Now, if they sell cars where these guys at the economy end selling see, what you can't do is sell a $17,000 car to me for $36,000 and make me like it.
No.
That dog won't hunt.
Yeah.
Sell me an Aston Martin Rapide electric for 80 instead of 197. I want to look at the dash first.
Yeah. Let me sit in it.
Could I close the door? But
yeah.
But
it's
show
cool.
me.
Yeah.
I'm from Missouri.
Yeah, it's cool.
And so that's what we're facing there. Another little glitch gotcha this week. Recall that Fisker, having made 280 cars, had a recall, and I'm told now they have actually manufactured 600 vehicles. It's unclear to me how many of those have been delivered and how many not.
Yeah, it is tough. You really can't tell.
And they have they've shut down their production line and laid off a bunch of workers. Now this put A123 in an awkward position.
Yeah, they were their cells.
See, we actually talked to A123 a year or two ago, and they told us this sad story of David Andrea and why they didn't want to sell the EV guys.
The EV guys, yeah, didn't sell you guys.
But the guy closed by saying, if I didn't feel that way, and I really wanted to sell them to you, I can't anyway. For the next year, we're gearing up for this 15,000 unit Fisker run, and we need every cell.
We need every bit of capacity we can get. Yeah.
So if I didn't feel that way, Jack, there's nothing I could do.
Nothing I could do anyway. Yeah. Nothing I could do anyway.
Fisker didn't make 15,000 cars. They made 600 cars.
Yes.
And that put A123 in a mess. Then they had a recall of their battery packs over a coolant connection. And all this was maybe they'd spring a leak.
Right. Yeah.
And so they put on a different connector or something so they wouldn't.
Right.
Upgraded to Summit Racing or something.
Yeah, they went to the full...
We could have showed them how to do this.
They went to full AN fittings or something. Yeah, that's right. No more hoses.
Right. You can't use those rubber hoses.
That's right, little hose
clamps. You got to use Summit Racing's AN fittings. And I love the nylon braided hose.
That is cool. It's nice to work with.
A123's been $1.65 a share.
Yeah.
Stumbling along. They have some other contracts. And a big one hanging out there is that Chevrolet has talked about doing an all-electric, real electric car,
yeah.
Called the Spark. Again, at the wrong end of the scale.
Right, down on the economy
little bitty economy car.
Yep.
You know, why don't these guys give me a call? This is not as hard as they're making it.
Yeah. Well, we know they're watching the show. They're just not paying attention.
They do. No, it's the hubris. They do not want to admit that they do not have it exactly right, even in the face of ongoing, visible, and publicly embarrassing
failure. Yes, that's right. It's like, come on, guys.
In any event. So there is some blue sky out there for A123.
Yeah, they've got some contracts, yeah.
But imagine gearing up to produce cells for 15,000 Fiskers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a cool contract. That's nice.
I mean, you got to be talking, what, 500 cells a car?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, or more.
So it'd be 500,000 cells per thousand.
Per thousand.
That's 5 million cells for 10,000. That's 7.5 million cells
a year. Yeah, that's good work if you can get it.
It takes
for a battery company.
It takes a lot, and as we say here in Missouri, it takes a mighty big dog to weigh a ton.
Yeah, that's right. It's a big dog.
And what that refers to is, while you're exaggerating, at least around here, it takes a mighty big dog to weigh a ton.
That's right. That's it.
7.5 million cells. They've contracted with Asia, Korea primarily, to spew forth these cells. And now they don't need them. But they don't own those factories. And it's not their factories in China.
No, that's all contracted out.
That's not their factories in Korea. This is all nonsense talk. Essentially, they have to be abrogating their contracts with the Asian suppliers in order not to be bankrupt.
Right, yeah, it's like they can't just have them produce cells. Yeah.
They can't just buy cells they don't need.
Right, that they can't deliver.
Well, you can't gear up to do 7.5 million cells overnight or this week.
No.
So they've been working on this for a year, and so have the Asians.
Yeah.
Now the production line is going. Fisker's supposed to have
Capacity's
been
in place.
last year,
the
middle of last year, cranking out these cars. And here's where all these cells were going. By the way, A123 invested $30 million in Fisker, so they would use their battery.
That's right. So they would be the primary supplier.
There's a lot of swing thoughts going on in this golf game.
That's right. That's right. You gotta shank it.
Man, you
gotta hit it into the weeds.
You do not want to hook this one into the crowd because a lot of people are watching.
That's right.
And you've got an awful lot of videotapes, golf magazines, and instructional manuals to go through to get that swing down. And so here they are, hooking one hard left, would be into the woods except for all the crowd.
Except for all the people, except for all the heads they're going to ricochet off.
And the TV cameras.
That's right.
This is going bad quick.
Yeah.
I'd rather be Tiger Woods and be sleeping around and beating my wife than be in this situation.
Don't get hit with the golf club.
Rush Limbaugh, you're a slut. That'll get our advertisers upset, huh?
Yeah, boy, yeah, that'll get them. Yeah.
If we had any.
I don't know.
If you'd ever get
I don't have to worry about the phone call.
What are these Asian companies supposed to do with their workers and their line?
Yeah, that puts them in a tough spot because that was a big buildup.
They've determined to sell them to me. Yeah. Apparently, all of them.
That's right. You can have as many as you can order. Yeah, that's right. We're buying.
And we may be the largest distributor of A123 cells in North America.
That's right. Yeah.
And worse, we don't know what we're getting or why.
No,
I'm making up a lot of this. Understand? We don't know where these cells are coming from. I can buy them. They say made in USA.
Yeah, that's just
some of them appear bizarre. To be coming from Korea, although there's some from Korea that say made in Korea. So
it's hard to tell what's going on.
These are made in USA cells, first rank, whatever that means.
Okay.
And full tab, which means they weren't earlier used on a Volkswagen project.
Right. Cut the tab off.
That's what I'm buying. This week, David Vio, has announced that there has been a problem, which I initially thought was with their battery packs. In Livonia, Michigan, they assemble the 20 amp hour prismatic cell, the flat pouch cell, into packs that go into Fisker.
Oh, they're making the Fisker modules in Michigan, huh?
And they said they had a tab welding machine off calibration and causing a problem in these packs. Well, now the story's kind of changing, and I don't really understand it, to a tab welding machine making the individual prismatic cells, one of 4.
Oh,
wow. And that it has caused defective cells that are not readily apparent by inspection, but could lead to a short in the cell and an early cell failure.
Oh, wow. So you can't tell.
When you put the cells under pressure in a pack.
In a pack, yeah. Oh, man.
We don't put ours under much pressure, and which may be why we haven't seen this.
Yeah, we don't put that many together, and just the tab is clamped.
You know, I did have 2 kind of strange failures on those resin.
The one blow
of those 2. One of them blew up, and so maybe we have seen.
Yeah, we might have seen it. We just don't know.
Never did determine what caused it.
Yeah.
But in any event, they have issued a recall, and despite their ISO rating, apparently they do not have good records of which packs got which cells from which of the tab welders. And so even though only one of them is involved,
how could they not know?
They're basically recalling all their battery modules.
Oh, man.
From everybody involved with vehicles, all of the ones using these prismatic cells. Now, this does not involve the cylindrical cells that they were working with BMW with. BMW announced this week they're going to Toyota to work with them on batteries.
Okay.
Don't know what coincidence there, but then But they do some grid applications. They have some cylindrical batteries, and this has nothing to do with that. But he put the potential damage here at $55 million.
Oh my!
Their stock dropped to $1.35, and I would say at this point, even the future of the survival of the company is under a serious cloud.
Yeah, oh, it's got to be. That's huge.
So after Fisker didn't do the 15,000 cars, and they still had to do a recall on everyone they had.
Everyone that they had, yeah.
With the liquid cooling.
Yeah.
Now they have to do a recall on the 600 other ones.
Right.
To replace the battery packs.
Man, I bet they have to take that car apart.
They're extending the warranty on the Fiskers from 50 months and 50,000 miles to 60 months, 60,000 miles.
Oh man,
as a result of this, and apparently A123 is going to step up to the plate for all of that.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. That is going to hurt.
That stings.
Yeah, that is going to hurt.
And I don't know at this point. After berating A123 for years over their surly attitude and know-it-all crap, and they're really were very sanctimonious about how only real good engineers like them could devise modules that would be safe and that ordinary rank and filers probably couldn't.
Yeah.
As it turns out, you can't either using those cells. What I thought of their cells all along when they were those little cylindricals.
Yeah.
My initial reaction was, if you tell me that I'm not a sufficiently good engineer to package these cells and make a battery out of it, and I'm looking at the battery, I think you probably know better than I do.
Yeah, that's right.
You know your product better than I do.
Right.
If you don't think I can put that together into a module, by God, you just might be right.
You might be right, that's right.
These may not be ready for prime time, and that turned out to be exactly the case with those cylindrical cells, and I never did like them. The 20 amp hour pouch cells, I did want to look at them. I was denied the opportunity to do so.
Right.
They originally sold me $10,000 worth of
the
cylindrical cells.
Yeah, we've still got them.
They just wanted a stupid amount of money and a big quantity, and I paid them and got them and played with them, about 30 of them,
until we have popped them.
They're still back there in a box somewhere.
Yeah, we've got popcorn in a
I couldn't get them to do anything. But I was interested in the 20 amp hour cells, and we got some of them from China, and I still don't know what to do with them because they're so fragile. They're pouch cells. That is what the OEMs are using. I like the heavily encased larger cells I get from China. Yeah. I call them prismatics. They're calling these prismatics. I call those pouch cells. But that are already encased in a heavy Lego-like plastic case and are in a bigger size. Where everything, see, when you're at 160 amp hour, 180 amp hours, everything's less critical than when you're down at 5 amp hours or 11 amp hours or something like that.
Yeah, right.
At that level, and so you wind up massively paralleling them. And now I've got a lot of connections, and I don't like connections. As everyone watching EVTV knows, number one, I've never met a connector I liked. And number two, I'm very suspicious at 1,000 amps of any connector, any connection.
Any connection, yeah. And
pure copper to pure copper welded.
Yeah.
I'm not happy.
No, it'd be like one piece of copper would be fine.
I would rather have one piece of copper.
Yeah.
What's this weld doing here? Why do we have this weld here?
Yeah, right. And imagine thousands of little tiny connections.
Can I take out this two-piece thing welded together and fashion a single piece of
one
copper,
piece,
and let's put that in there?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm looking for. I don't like connections, and there's a reason. Now, I can go into it or leave it lay, but I don't like them.
Yeah, I mean, there's just an opportunity for bad things to happen.
It is a huge opportunity.
Yeah. It's just,
and there is nothing ever improved by a connection.
No. Nope.
You have to have the connection to get back to just operating.
Right, exactly.
It can kill you and burn your car to the ground, but it can't make it go any faster.
No.
Can't make it go any further.
Do anything,
it can't do anything good.
Can't do anything
There's
positive.
nothing good ever comes out of a
connection.
Have you ever heard of anything getting better because it had a connector in it?
No. just an opportunity for failure.
It's an opportunity to screw something up.
Yeah. Yeah, and thousands of them are thousands
so I
of
have
opportunities.
a bias against the whole Tesla approach to vehicle batteries. That said, I don't know everything, and a bias is not a religion. It's a bias.
Right. It's a current bias. May change someday.
So let's take a look. We got some of these cells that have been playing with them, and frankly, they have a unique, I think unique, characteristic that I'm somewhat attracted to, and that's their ability to put out a truly stupid amount of power.
I know, they're just like,
they're
stupid powerful. That should be their advertising slogan. A123 pouch cells, stupidly powerful.
My daughter calls this retard strong.
Yeah, that's right, retard strong, exactly.
These things are retard strong.
We'll have to get some T-shirts.
Yeah, well, I'll probably get in trouble.
I know. Oh well.
But
tell us to stop.
They'll just shut off more of Rush's advertisers.
They can't get ours. Right.
So these cells are retard strong. That would be the commercial.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
retard strong. A123 retard strong batteries. That's right. And the density is not great, and the package is terrible. But they're retard strong.
Yeah, that's right.
One of those little cells, if you get one from us, you be careful.
Yeah, be careful with me. I don't run around playing with metal.
Yeah, you can hurt yourself bad with one of these cells.
Yeah.
Not from electrocution. You can hold both tabs and it will not hurt you. But if you drop your eyeglasses across those two tabs, you may wind up with a face full of gas plasma eyeglass.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
It'll melt them and gasify them.
It'll vaporize
before you knew you had dropped your glasses.
Yeah.
This will already have taken place. And I've burnt my hands this way.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it happens quick. Metal becomes a liquid and boils to a gas, and you don't even know there's something going on yet.
Yeah.
It's that quick.
It's instantaneous, yeah.
And suddenly you have in your face a 5,000 degree gas plasma ball of shit that is not where
it's nothing to do about it.
Dirty bags of water want to be around.
That's right. That's right.
Which is what you are.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. There's not a whole.
You're not supposed to be in that world.
That's right. That's a different dimension.
Different dimension. And
oh man!
And so that's the issue. And these cells are retard strong.
Yeah.
If you short two of these tabs, they can put out 500 amps. One of them.
Yeah. Don't even send us the video.
Yeah, we don't even want to see the video.
We don't even want to see the video.
And so they're. They're interesting, and we're playing with them. Mm-hmm. At this point, I almost feel some sympathy for David Vio, and we'll reset the clock and whatever we can do for you, David, because I want him to survive.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want this company to go down. These cells are kind of interesting, even though they've treated us terribly. And have been so know-it-all and so, but it's, they didn't actually invent that.
No, it just
posture.
We've been there before.
As we go into the future, it's going to become readily apparent that the entire movement of personal transportation to a magnetic drive, galvanic power.
Galvanic power. The power of galvanism
is dependent on you, and that is you have to build a car and go show somebody. And the more people you show, the better. And the better you are at telling the tale.
Mm-hmm. The better story you got, yeah.
Which is, I think, why a lot of them follow us. It's not they've got their car built, a lot of them, but they want to be effective in providing information about the politics, the economics, and the reality, of electric cars. Mm-hmm. And don't gloss over the negatives.
Tell them the bad stuff. Yes, absolutely.
Just walk them through it.
Yeah.
It's there's issues all around. They tend not to be the ones that they're worried about, which is range and recharge time. But but demonstrate the vehicles and the good parts and the bad parts. The bad parts are they're expensive for one thing.
They absolutely are.
A lot of the stuff for them are unobtainium. They're described in vainglorious websites that are just absolutely the state of the art of the genre of websitedom.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
No products existing underneath at all. And,
that's right.
So there's some of that, and that distorts the marketplace. Why should I introduce this, use this old world Series DC forklift motor when I could have a Joshua axial trick double throwing down, quick disconnect, overspeed, protected, self-lubricating, flavor-swaving motor?
Yeah, wheel motors this big.
Yeah, and that can drive railroads.
Right. Yeah. I've seen them.
Yeah, I saw them on the web.
I saw them, I saw them on the web.
Well, cool.
Maybe we shouldn't have done so much internet stuff, you know. Maybe it's our fault.
You think?
Yeah, maybe I sold too many ads.
You might have.
Sorry.
The power to create is the power to make ugly. And so it goes. Brain, let's take a look at something a little more mundane. Well, for one thing, since we're talking about A123, let's take a look at the Flatten Em series.
Oh, we'll give an update. All right, let's do it.
All right, old guys and otherwise electric vehicle fanatics. Here we are back at the designing the Flatten Em series of our A123 batteries. And by now you've heard about the very interesting development with A123. We are growing somewhat increasingly fond of the cells, although they are a heroic pain in the schwanz to put together into a battery to do anything. This is going to be our version of the Tesla undercar battery. If you'll recall, we did an undercar battery for Speedster Redux, and that actually worked out pretty well. We haven't done much scraping. We got up to 192 volts, and that car has a 150-mile range. This is a little bit different thing. We're going to use this in some tests to see if it'll stiffen our battery on Speedster Part Duh and give us a little additional range, perhaps for a Cape Girardeau Enduro in September, 126 miles. But also, we envision this as a total battery pack for a high-performance electric vehicle system-driven car. And that is the 120-volt, essentially, vehicle. This would be a small battery pack for a 40 to 50-mile range. I would say at reduced cost, but the costs are mounting pretty quickly as we take advantages from targets of opportunity. I've been working basically on the frame for this, and so we proceed at a glacial pace, guaranteed to put your wife to sleep while you watch this program, and perhaps yourself as well. So it's not a bad way to go. Get your Oreos, your milk, and your footsie pajamas, and I'll talk about this a little bit. We've made a frame out of angle iron, bolted to our probably 3/8 inch polycarbonate bottom that our first layer of 12 cells and 3 cells wide, or 36 cells, comprising 40 volts and 60 amp hours is made of. And that's going to serve as the bottom of our pack. And we've added this angle iron, and now I've added a 4-inch piece of aluminum, just 0.090 6061 aluminum plate that I bolted to the angle iron. I haven't done this end yet, it's still open, but the two sides and this end. And the new material. Let's talk about this. What's it called? Mule hide or something? This is my friend since high school, Freddie Glick, is a roofer, and I constantly have roof leaks, and he comes and fixes them. And mostly we do rubber roofs. And this is actually some tape. It's about 8 inches wide. It's a very soft rubber, and it's sticky on both sides. So I have this thing. So I'm using that to kind of seal some places, like we laid the end angle irons over these angle irons, leaving a little gap between the polycarbonate and the angle. I filled that with some of this rubber tape, and we're going to wind up with some corners that are a little bit open, and we'll fill those with on the inside with some of this to keep out moisture and water as you drive down the road. So this is kind of how we're going to weatherproof our box, and it's very low tech. It's just some rubber sticky tape that they use in roofing. I don't know how else to call it. You go to a roofing supply and tell them you want some of the 8-inch tape for a rubber roof. What else are we doing? This is the most positive terminal on our pack, and how that's going to break down is we'll have a cable enter here. This is a gland nut, a size M32 gland nut that has a little backer on it, and we will drill a hole right here where this gland nut will go and connect with this, and that will let our connecting cable come into the pack, and we'll be able to tighten this down and again maintain a weather seal. That's actually going to connect to our most positive terminal, but as a target of opportunity, that's a good place to bolt a fuse. And we would have to lower the pack to change the fuse, but the fuse is particularly important if we're going to have 2 battery packs, the one that's in my car, and we're going to add this one. I certainly want to have a fuse. However high current I think this may go, if this battery pack would short out, for example, the other pack would try to charge it. And while it's fused, we also want to fuse this one. And so if something in this pack were to go awry and it's short, or even a few cells in it short, or it gets filled up with water and shorts, this fuse should open before it totally drains and destroys my other battery pack. But in any case, fuses on any battery pack are an excellent idea. We use a Ferris Shawmut A30QS 800-4. That's a 300-volt fuse for up to 800 amps. Now, when you say that, they don't blow as soon as you hit 800 amps. We can do 2,000 amps out of this thing momentarily. But if you do it for any length of time, it'll blow this fuse. And so we'll use this gland nut, a cable, and we'll connect the cable to here. That'll be the most positive end of our pack. At the other end, what I have, and that fuse is $100 or so. The gland nut's 10 maybe. This is our old friend, the Kilovac Zonka 3 relay, part number EV200AAANA. This is your standard 12-volt shorty, and I need it to be short because of the way we're building our stack. Now our next layer, this cell would be over here, and this area is going to be kind of open, and I will simply cut out some of the polycarbonate where this can stick up. And I'm going to put this relay here. I'm going to take a piece of copper strapping and simply bend it around and put holes in it and so forth to connect one terminal of this to this terminal on my battery. Now the other layer of battery will lay on here, and it should be right over the top of this. We'll probably separate this whole strip here with some of our rubber roofing, or I've got some mylar tape or both to keep them from shorting out. But we'll put this terminal to here and this terminal to the battery laying over here on the other side. That's in the next layer. And I'll tie the ground to one of these screws on the frame, and this would want 12 volts, and I'll probably run that around and out the gland nut. More likely we'll run it out the gland nut. Well, that would be yes, it'll be over here. and that's probably, we'll go out that gland nut. We'll have a gland nut here for a positive terminal, a gland nut here for a negative terminal. Now the next layer will run from negative to positive, connect to this negative, to this positive, and that'll give us 80 volts. The next layer on top would be negative on this end and positive on that end, tying to the second layer. We'll probably just clip that together with a cable or maybe some of our braided straps. But by putting this contactor in here and running a 12-volt line out, I could very easily have a toggle switch on the dash to switch in my booster pack or turn it off. And if you were using this as your only pack, it kind of gets your contactor out of the weather and out of the engine compartment and neatens it all up. It's in here. And again, you can use it the same way as when you turn on the key. You turn on the contactor and connect the battery. The rest of the time the battery is disconnected. And so it gives you a little control of a remote battery that's under your car. The reason I want it is I want to be able to drive the car with the regular battery and then switch to this one coming on. I may even have it where I can switch the other one off. And so I could drive the car on either battery or on both batteries. And that's a technique I like to use to get a feel for real world testing. Not so much numbers, some of this is by feel. What does it actually do? And so we're going to have a contactor to connect this with the next level. And then our third level will be on top, and our negative cable will go out that corner and that direction. And I would see this normally being under the car crossways. Most cars are that wide. And of course, we'll add another piece of angle aluminum to the top, but coming out this way. And we'll bolt that to this plate. And then that will have holes in it, allowing me to bolt up into the frame of the car. So we're going to have a very stiff aluminum, but lightweight aluminum frame. We got an awful lot of hardware here. I've got, these are actually little brass 1/4-inch screws. The angle is threaded, so it threads into that. And then the protruding thread, I actually put a Nord lock and a washer on it. So there's $17,000 worth of nut and bolt and washer hardware in this project already, kind of upping our expense. And as you can see, our weight and volume are going up for not really that much cells. So again, our density is not terribly good, but our granularity letting us design a pack like this is pretty good, and we'll have a pack that'll be a full 120 volts. It'll only be 60 amp hours, but that 60 amp hours would be able to put out 1,400 amps quite easily. That's way more than we'll ever need for a high-performance electric vehicle system, which typically does 650 amps max. But what that means is this pack is not going to sag in voltage much at all. We're going to be using half of its power output. And so it should be able to maintain the voltage very nicely. And when we combine that with the density of our regular Calbs, we should have a car. I've got that Speedster will do 100 miles now. With this additional 9,600 watt hours, that should give me another 40 miles. And so I'll have a 140 mile, 150 mile car capable of doing the enduro. But it will also keep maximum power, maximum voltage to that Curtis 1238-7601. And so this is going to have some utility for us and be fun to play with. I'd say it's going to wind up being kind of an expensive pack, and it's been very laborious to assemble and continues to be so. But we're coming up with little targets of opportunity. We'll add a fuse, a contactor, these strain relief, we call them gland nuts, but they'll help weatherize it, and have some good cables coming out of this, and be able to put the car on the lift and jack this up underneath and hook it to the car. It'll be way out of the way. If only I had about 1,000-pound carbon fiber molly tube speedster roller with Ford rack and pinion front steering and independent rear suspension, the IRS version of the VW rear axle with four-wheel discs and aluminum hubs. Oh well, but I digress. Maybe someday, with a carbon fiber body that weighs about 30 pounds. But where would I get that? Well, we'll see. Then this 200-pound battery pack on the bottom of it would make a very lightweight, very stylish speedster. And in truth, a 40-mile vehicle or a 50-mile vehicle for me in Cape Girardeau would work fine. Especially as I have others that I can take out on the back roads for an hour or two if I want. But tooling around town, this would be fantastical. We're also running into people with other uses for these cells. Some guys with video systems and so forth that have to go on the road have some very strange battery packs and inverters and so forth. I heard from a guy today that normally has a 12-volt, 16 amp hour battery and an inverter to drive some equipment that he has to have on site. And he wants a 24-volt, essentially 40 amp hour system made out of these A123 cells, and it strikes him that the A123 cells are the way to go. Actually, they would be perfect for that application, and indeed overkill in some ways. But he could build a little 24-volt battery after the fashion of our 12-volt battery, which has 6 cells and in 4 series, 4x6. He could do a 2x8 very easily in the same space and with the same foam and so forth. So that's an update on the ongoing saga of now my new career, which is building a flat pack battery out of A123 cells as best I can. And I'm spending too much. It's going to be too heavy. It'll be too big for what's in it, which is going to be, this is 36 cells. We'll be at 108 cells total for 120 volts and 60 amp hours, and a couple hundred pounds. But that's what we're heading for, and I think it might be an interesting addition. So we continue to play with A123 cells. We have them on the website for sale now, 31 bucks a piece. I've got about 500 of them here. Oh, we sold 100 of them this week. It's turning into a popular item, as predicted, in 4s and 8s and 16s. People playing with them, hooking them up different ways, trying different things with them. And that's, I encourage all that. It's so much more of a thing to experiment with these things. As I learn over and over, as I've watched Damian McGuire learn over and over, you can know a lot about this. And the next thing you hook up and try, guess what? It didn't work out the way you thought. And so you have to understand that a lot of us that are doing these things, when we run into some of you armchair guys that are typing everything you know, Dan Friedrichsen, for example, it's almost exasperating because of the distance we know you are from doing this. For others, it's fine to watch and let us make the mistakes and learn. But the ones that want to be experts by typing a lot and thought experimenting themselves into knowledge, the guys that are doing it are just shaking their heads because it's too many times what we put together and think will work. Either works better than we ever imagined. I've had quite a bit of that, fortunately. That keeps me going. Or much worse than I had hoped. And that's kind of a downer, but that's life at EVTV. And that's part of the process of doing this. It all seems obvious when it's written and in arrears, but that's not how things happen. And it's not how things happen for anybody. And we're seeing a spate of theories go into bankruptcy courts across multiple countries as hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent on armchair theorizing. You have to kind of work your way into this. If it'll work on a small scale, then you can scale it up to a larger one. But along the way, you're going to run into things as A123 and Azure Dynamics and Bright Cove and so forth, and Tesla and everybody else do. Chevrolet included. It's kind of a gruesome process. It's sort of like law and sausage. You have to be very interested in it to really want to see it being made, because it's a much more gruesome process than you thought. In any event, we're pleased to share it. We don't need any proprietary knowledge here. I'm 57. I eat well. We don't have to patent anything or come up with any secret stuff. We don't need investors, and so we can just do this and put it on camera and show it with you. A lot of other people have a lot of constraints, most of them in their own mind, by the way, but for whatever reason, we're a little bit rare in that we're not constrained by many of the realities that apply to people developing technology, which they at least hope will become intellectual property and of some value. We can kind of give it away. So this will be our Flatten Em series, and I think it's going to avoid some of the problems even that A123 has had. There'll be some pressure on these packs, but I think we can ameliorate that and keep it to a minimum, and I don't think we're going to need cooling. I don't think we're going to need a BMS. I've even backed away from the concept of hooking up cell logs to it to monitor the voltages. We're going to do a good bottom balance like we always do, bolt this thing up and go drive the hell out of it, and see if I'm wrong again. It's always possible. But I'm feeling pretty good about this right now. Stay with us. It's going to be laborious. I'm afraid this one is going to be multiple shows as we build it up. I can't do it as a full-time thing. This is sort of one of those projects when I walk past it, I bolt another couple of things onto it, and that's where we're at. But stay with us. It's, I think, could wind up with a pretty nice little pack in the end, and a design that any of you could build if you can mark a place for a hole and hit it right with a drill. That's basically what we're doing here. But there's a lot of it, a lot of hand work to piece this together. More than I would like to see. This is not a viable product to produce. It would be viable for you to trade some sweat equity for a car, where you can, instead of spending money, spend your time and effort and wind up with a smaller, less expensive investment in the cells themselves. But you're going to have to buy screws and aluminum and drill a lot of holes. And that's the usual trade, and really what the DIY thing is about. The value proposition for electric vehicles remains difficult at best and impossible in some situations. In order to enjoy an electric car and not spend a truly stupid amount of money, you kind of have to do it yourself. And by trading your sweat equity for the labor and the profit that would appear in most electric vehicle offerings, you can get it down to where it's simply expensive instead of being stupid money. And that's kind of where we're at with electric cars right now, and why I think you all are going to lead the revolution in personal mobility from internal combustion engines to electric magnetic galvanic drive. And it's such an important thing that I think it could, our very existence as a nation and our future economic prosperity is sort of linked to getting off of this oil thing and getting into electricity for our personal mobility. If you want to keep having personal mobility and not crash your banking system or wind up with us in a world war to seize petroleum all over the world, this is rarely is such an elegant solution readily presented, but at this point the value proposition is such that there's only one group that can play this game, and that's the guys who go into their own garage, sweep out a space about the size of a car and start working off what it would take to build their own. And you can do it. It really doesn't require a great deal of mechanical skill, but it is a ongoing series of exercises in small problem solving. And here's one we're working on. Stay with us.
Well, you're kind of plugging along. You're over there every now and then. I know where to find you sometimes, over in the corner putting that together.
It's the second grade art class all over.
Yeah, it's getting there,
I see the video of E123's module, and I look at my little thing, and I just look at little and ugly, and my mother dresses me funny. I think the advantage will be that mine won't blow up. Won't blow up,
That's right,
and we won't have to recall it.
That's right. Won't need any. I won't have leaks from liquid cooling.
Won't have liquid cooling leaks. We won't blow up.
We may have bad tabs though. We don't know that.
Could
God,
how would we know?
Well, we won't until they disintegrate.
And so it goes.
Yeah, that's looking good.
So that's where we're going with it. As I said, we've got a guy who has another application, some sound equipment or video equipment or something. And I think that the granularity of those cells leads them to a lot of solutions to things, including, that's why I did as a sample a starter lights ignition battery.
Here's a
$1,000 battery for your car. This makes no sense unless you need one.
Right. Unless you have an application for one, yeah.
Then here's how you make one.
Yeah, that's right. You never know.
That's
there's applications waiting to be filled.
We're a little bit stopped on our installation of the motors for the Escalade, and it's not entirely our doing. Let's take a look at motor brushes and the girls that love them.
All right, you got it.
Let's talk a little bit about motors, and this is going to be a very strange segment. I'm going to combine some very basic information that most of you already know and some kind of advanced information that may not even be true, but we think is. In one discussion about series DC motors, and then I'm going to express an opinion that's going to probably anger everyone in the industry about this. This is a Netgain Warp 9 motor, believe it or not. And I've kind of got it pieced together here to show the armature. Some would call it a rotor. This is the part of the motor that turns, the moving part. And this is the rear end of the motor, not the drive end, the commutator end, where the brushes are located. I've kind of got this put together. Let me see if I can get it apart without hurting myself. Turn this up on end. I'm going to try to work this off, and that's not going to work. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, and I'm going to pull the brushes back a little bit so I can get this off of here. I'm going to show you how to do that at some point in this presentation. But basically I'm taking a hooked device hooking the pressure spring on the brush and pulling it back and pulling the brush out a little bit till the spring rests on the side of the brush. In order that I can pull this commutator end off of my armature. And there it is. Let's see if we can do it without breaking everything. And I want you to observe a couple of things. These are our brushes. We have a series of 8 of them, and they kind of come in pairs. Let me release these springs back so they'll be more visible. This is an older model Warp 9 motor, and if you look at this, you can see that we have several sets of brushes. Our A2 terminal is tied to a copper bar that goes to this brush here, and it's also tied to another insulated copper bar that goes to the brush 180 degrees out of it. And it's actually a pair of brushes in each location for redundancy. Our A1 is tied to this brush and then via an insulated copper bar around the bell end to the brush 180 degrees out. And these brushes are spring-loaded, and they ride up and down with that spring maintaining a pressure to hold them against our commutator. This is one of our new brushes. It's a Hellwig split brush. It's called a split top, red top split brush, and it's divided in 2 halves. Now notice that it doesn't look much like a brush. At least not like a hairbrush. This is a piece of carbon that can conduct electricity with a lead that we will tie to our connections that go to A1 and A2, armature 1 and 2. And this brush is simply a piece of carbon. It's actually, these are called an electrographite. They have metal graphite and pure graphite. This is an electrographite type from Hellwig. And this, particularly when we're installing, is an H60 split top. The split brush, as opposed to what we have in here, which is a solid block, allows the 2 halves of the brush to ride up and down independently. And that gives us a remarkable effect. It's quite an innovation in brushes. Hellwig's been doing motor brushes for 80 years now. So let's talk a little bit about our armature. This is our armature, and it's basically, they say, a series of coils. It's not much of a coil. If you look here, we have a series of copper bars, and that copper bar goes down in a slot between our iron core, laminated iron core, and across the end, around the axle, and around the shaft, with a little curve to get around it, and then comes up in the slot on the opposite side. And so, for example, this one and this one are actually one piece, and it's just a big U that fits into this armature iron. So it's a coil, but it's actually not even a complete coil. It's just a U shape that turns inside the motor, and so inside the field windings that are in the case of the motor, or the stator. and this is what turns the thing. So it's not much of a coil, but it can carry a lot of current because it's a copper bar. At this end, it's kind of soldered to another device, which is a commutator. And this brings these ends very close together in a circle, and they're fit close together, and ideally they won't fly apart at high RPMs. And they have a little bit of mica. Usually, I don't know what they're using for an insulator, Warfield motors, but traditionally it's a mineral called mica that makes a very thin but very strong dielectric to insulate these bars on this commutator from each other. The innovation with this red top split brush is, as you can see here, the brush actually contacts more than one, about two, and maybe in some cases you could get it to be in contact with 3 commutator bars at the same time. And that's kind of interesting. By splitting the brush, we can have it ride up and down with the variations in the commutator independently. And what that does is let us transfer the current to the next bar as the motor turns, while the other one is still kind of floating in contact with the previous one. And that dramatically reduces our sparking or arcing. Arcing is the #1 cause of death in a series DC motor. If you could watch the motor turn, you could actually see arcing and sparking occurring, and there is a little bit at all times. If you were to be able to drive your car down the road and observe this, if you see orange arcing, it normally means the commutator has a problem. If you see blue arcing, it's normally a brush issue, and you want to minimize the arcing because these are little explosions on the end of the carbon brush and cause the brush to wear unevenly and to have an early death. And so we take A1 and we put it on 2 sides. And we take A2 and we put it on 2 sides connected opposite. And what this does is allow us to have 2 sets of coils energized at any one particular time. And and so they interact with the field set up by the field coils and cause the motor to turn. As we increase RPM, there's an armature effect that causes the field set up by the field windings to warp a little bit. It actually rotates. And what this does is it causes some induced currents in the loops that are not being used or not connected with the brushes. And that builds up a voltage in them to where when the brush does finally contact them, it causes a spark. And if you recall from our discussion of the 11HV, we used interpoles to counter this rotation of the field flux, lines of magnetic force. On this motor, which is that has no interpoles, what they do is advance the whole brush structure to where it would be at some middling RPM, say 2,000 RPM or 1,200 RPM, to where you have a little bit of arcing at the low end, but as you go up in RPM, it gets into the sweet spot of the motor and it's aligned properly. And then, of course, at the high RPM, you get a little bit of arcing again. And so we're trying to advance the structure of the brushes to the right coils of the armature here, where we're going to be making most of our power. The advent of this split top brush, which we're going to install today, is that it minimizes the arcing by having the two halves of the brush separately riding on the commutator. And so the one is on the next coil before it should quite be there, and riding separately from the one on the previous coil. And these brushes, as I said, in a position can actually span about 3 coils at a time. And so with 4 sets, you have probably 12 of your coils actually active, and the others are sort of always along for the ride and subject to these induced currents. They're really not a current because there's no path for them without the brush, but it induces attempts to induce a current, and so builds up a voltage, a fairly high voltage actually, across that coil to cause this this arcing. And so we want to minimize that. The issues with brush wear, and these brushes, I've heard everything from 120 miles on a set of brushes this week from Warren Thornburg of North Carolina to 300,000 miles on these H60 brushes from George Hamstra, a fairly optimistic take on it, as to how long they'll last. In this end, you'll see a couple of our brushes have additional little yellow wires that come out, and they're all tied to this little connector here, and that is a little open circuit that if the brush wears down a certain amount, it will short those yellow wires, and the resistance of this will go to 0 before the brush is quite worn out, and that will give you, they're called a brush wear indicator. No one really uses them. They're actually a neat device. I think George is dropping them from the Netgain line. The main issues of wear are, of course, this electrical arcing and the mechanical friction of the brush on the commutator. This is, we had 10,000 miles probably on this motor when we pulled it. It's got a very nice patina, they call it, or film of carbon that you can clearly see on the commutator in 2 tracks laid down by the brushes. Getting this layer of carbon laid down is a big deal in running your motor, and it's part of the seating process. You want, in seating the brush, however they have it in these brush settings, and in fact, just simply adjusting your brushes or moving them around is a bad idea because it changes their position. These are not very precise. They're kind of a slider that it rides back and forth in. It quickly wears into the proper place, and the surface becomes properly radiused to the, if you notice, this has got a little curve. This is a brand new brush. It's pre-radiused to fit this commutator on the 9-inch motor. And so that's an important issue. But this, so having the surface of the brush wearing evenly and making full contact with the commutator instead of just in a couple of hot spots is a big deal to carrying full current to the motor. And so you want this worn in on that commutator, fitted to it very closely, and that comes with wear. So you have a little break-in period, a seating period, to get that to happen. That carbon film reduces the friction between these copper bars and this brush to 10% of what it is initially. It's a lubricant. Graphite, of course, is often used as a lubricant, very fine particles of graphite. And that's what you're building up here is a little graphite film on that commutator, and it lubricates this whole thing to reduce the friction between the brush and the commutator to as little as 10% of the initial value. And so this patina is very important, and it's a very good thing. Do not clean it off. It's not bad, it's something we want. Now, if your commutator gets pitted and worn, and again, that's usually indicated by orange sparking, you actually have to remove this from the motor, and they call it turning the commutator. You simply put it on a lathe, and with a very sharp tool, you go across as this is turning on the lathe and put a very even cut and take down some of your commutator. When you do that, then you have to go back and score the bevel, the edges between each rod meticulously with a hand file to make sure there's no particles of copper between those bars, and that you get down to the mica insulator so there's no shorting of the bars. And that's how you dress up one of these armatures, is turning the commutator. Why did this come up? We have had a request from Netgain and Hellwig that we replace the brushes in the Jim Husted motor that we got, which are H49 grade brushes, with their H60 grade. And that brings up an interesting topic that for most of you is not very useful. The Netgain motors normally come with an H49 brush. The H49 brush is not as strong as the H60. It's not as hard as the H60, and it does not put down as much film as the H60. But it's very good for high voltage, high current loads. Now, I've said one of the advantages of the split brush is that we can go to higher voltages. Previously, the Netgain motors, the book on the voltage that you could use with the series DC motor was 170 volts. We have one car, and about to have a second one, using Netgain motors at 192 volts. And I think you're probably good with these motors with the split top brushes at up to about 210, perhaps 220 volts. If you go beyond that, you're going to have arcing and you're going to shorten your brush life. In fact, I'd say anything over 200 volts, you're going to shorten it. But these, we're confident, can take us from the 170 volt level to the 192 volt level, and that's a big deal. More voltage at the same current is more power. Our kilowatt factor coming out of the motor, if we're at 100 amps and 170 volts, that's 17 kilowatts. If we're at 192 volts, that's 19,200 watts. And so at 1,000 amps, that's 192 kilowatts instead of 170 kilowatts, 20 kilowatts being, 30 horsepower difference. So higher voltage is a big deal, up to a point. What else would I mention here? You might see this little bit of clay on here. This is actually balancing putty. And we've had some issues with the Netgain motors with this coming off. If this comes off, it gets in the motor and causes all kinds of problems. I lost my microphone there. The Netgain motors have traditionally used the solid brushes, and the equivalent of that is the H49. And in fact, now that they're using the split top, they're using the H49 brush. There's a reason for that. Netgain, traditionally, the history of Netgain is about drag racing. George Hamstra, John Wayland, and a few others, Peter or Paul something or other, I can't remember the guy's name, which George will kill me for because it's what the capital P is in Warp, is to honor him. He passed from cancer a few years ago. But they were part of a racing team called Bad Amplitude. And they had a drag racer that was electric at the turn of the century, 10 or 12 years ago, 2002, something like that. And they were racing this car. And they were using forklift motors from Warfield Electric, which is about 12 miles down the road from where, in Frankfort, from where George lives in Lockport, Illinois. And so they kept blowing up motors and going down to Warfield and asking for fixes, not only to have the motor rebuilt, but changed with heavier terminals or heavier this or heavier that, more banding to do higher RPMs. And so he's continued this process. He got out of the drag racing situation fairly early on, but continued with the motor development and continued to work with Warfield. Last year, the Warp 9, and this is an older version, had 26 different engineering change notices to Warfield, and they've gotten through the old thing. The Warp 9 you get now is a much improved motor from the one you see here. One thing, it has larger terminals. They were blowing terminals off. Well, as George says, when you strengthen one area, you move the problem to another. And one of the engineering changes was to go to the H49 red top or split brush from Hellwig, which allows this higher voltage. The H49 is a very good brush in that it allows very high currents and very high voltages and is very durable in that sense. It's not very good at lightly loaded action. In other words, coasting or trolling along at 25 amperes or something. Of course, we're doing the Escalade with an automatic transmission, actually, and so most of the time we're going to be idling along at 25 or 30 amps and periodically putting down 2,000 amps for a few seconds and then back to 25 or 30 amps. And Jim Husted, at my request, had put in the Hellwig red split top brushes. Tom Brunka from Hellwig went back after watching a recent show where we're about to put the motor in, and went back to the records and noted that Mr. Husted had installed the H49. At about that time, Netgain has received contacts from 3 people, Warren Thornburg being among them, of brush failure, complete brush failure, eat up brushes after 100 or 200 miles in their motors. And so the topic of brushes has come up, and Hellwig has offered to send me a set of brushes, which is not inconsequential for our twin 11s going in the Cadillac. That's 16 brushes. And they sent them at their expense if I would but use the H60s in an effort to avoid having an early brush failure with the H49s. The H60s are harder, they're physically stronger, they put down a better layer of film, they have a lower friction, and they still are good for pretty high voltage and currents. And we're not going to have any problem running 2,000 amps. Of course, that's through 16 brushes and 2 commutators. And so I think it's going to work very well, and apparently will work better with the H60s, which George thinks would give you 100 to 300,000 miles off those brushes. Now, the irony here is you cannot really specify your brush when ordering from Netgain, and they are historically making motors for drag racers. But for street cars, the H49 may not be the optimum brush. And you can indeed change the brushes yourself if you would get a set of H60s from Hellwig or from Netgain, for that matter. I guess you can order them through Netgain. So this, for a Warp 9, is their part number is 96-62117-674-3-01-860, and that's for the 9-inch diameter motors, or the 11HV that we used in the Cobra, which uses the 9 inches armature. And so for either one of those, that's the part number. We'll put it up here. And we're going to talk a little bit about changing the brushes. You really only need 2 tools to do this, and you can do it on an assembled motor, and we're going to show you that on the 11-inch motors next, although we're going to have to pull it off of our bench to access the bottom ones, and this is what you run into. In theory, you can change these brushes with the motor installed. As a practical matter, you can't usually get to all 4 of the ports. The ports are in our end housing here. This is not the drive end. Let me talk, before I show you how to change them, let's talk about something. You can clearly see that these brushes are angled, and they're kind of angled in a certain bias to the center. They're not aimed at the center of the shaft. They're aimed off center, and they're biased in this direction. And that implies a rotation in this direction, which would be your clockwise direction from this aux end. Now, the way they express that at Netgain is counterclockwise drive end. And so from the end you put to the motor, you would turn it counterclockwise. And that brings up 2 topics. One is they show diagrams how to hook this motor up to go clockwise drive end. And that's for vehicles like the Honda, which their drive shaft turns backwards. And the implication is you can simply rewire your connections to this motor and use it on a Honda turning in the wrong direction. Now, how can that be when these are not aimed at the center of the shaft and they're biased and slanted this way? If I turn them against the brushes, I cannot believe I would have the same brush wear as I would the other way. And so I would not recommend doing that. I would sooner see you turn around and use the aux end of the motor to drive a Honda or a vehicle that has a clockwise from drive end requirement. The other issue is if you are seating these on the bench before you put it in the car, make certain that you're driving this in the proper direction, and that is counterclockwise from the drive end, or you're going to be seating the brushes wrong. And I suspect this is what's happened with this sudden spate of 3 very early brush failures. We've talked about seating. Tom Brunca did at the convention, and I'm afraid people have gone out and seated the brushes at turning them the wrong direction, and then put it in the car and turned it the right direction. Now, you can turn it in the reverse direction, but how far are you going to go in reverse in your car? And that's not going to hurt anything. But for all-day use, rotating that against the bias and the angle of these brushes, I do not believe could be a good thing. And so I think it's important when you're seating them and running them for several days at light current loads that you do that. Another interesting fact is that the coefficient of friction between the brush and the commutator goes down as the current load goes up, and this is part of the secret of the issue with the H49 and the H60. If you always were going to run at 1,000 amperes, and that's basically what a drag racer does. You don't drive it around the block. You might idle it up to the starting line, and then when you go at whatever power you can muster for about 9-10 seconds. And then you're kind of idling back to the pit. In a street vehicle, we're doing a lot more idling. And so, ergo, the desire for the H60. Now, the problem with the H60 is it's harder, it's stronger, and it has really a better film layer and a lower coefficient of friction. What that does is make it much more difficult to radius it. The seating procedure becomes somewhat lengthy and arduous, and they're a noisy brush until you get them properly seated. But for many people with an electric vehicle, and a set of these is, I don't know, 115, 130 bucks, something like that. They're expensive, but not heroically so. You can buy a set and swap these out fairly easily. And for street applications, the H60 may well be simply a much superior brush to the H49. That's simply a historical legacy of what Netgain Motors is and what they're about. They still sponsor race teams. They're still about drag racing. That's where they came from, and they can't not be that. But for us, which most of the time we're going to be driving around in an Escalade at 22 miles an hour. Ask me how I know. That's how this car was driven with a gasoline thing. Brian and Matt Hauber tested the 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds. I'd never put my foot in it in this car. It idles around town at 22 miles an hour and idles along on the freeway at 70 miles an hour at less RPM than the 22 mile per hour and down. And so that's what this dual 11-inch motor is going to face, is seconds of terror at 2,000 amps and probably 170 volts, and 340 kilowatts, 400 horsepower. And 99% of the time, it's going to be drawing 35 amps, trolling along Sprigg Street here in Cape Girardeau at 22 miles an hour. And so they want me to put in the H60s. You need two tools to change these brushes. It's really quite simple. This is a 5/16 inch nut driver, and this is a hook. I bought this pre-built. It's a purpose-engineered hook. George bends a screwdriver, and that will work fine. But you can see our springs here have a little thing, and what I'm going to do here, if you can see that, and we want a close-up of it, is I'm going to pull that spring out and push this brush back and rest the spring on the side of the brush. And I can do that again with the bottom brush. And in fact, I'm just going to go around and do that with all of them. And it's a pretty simple procedure. If you get the hook in behind there, you retract the spring. The purpose of the spring is to maintain a constant pressure on the brush, holding it on the commutator regardless of RPM or brush wear. And so when you do change brushes, you want to inspect these springs and make sure they're working well and at full strength and don't have any particular wear items or corrosion on them. And if you suspect them, you need to get new springs too, because the spring is a very important part of all this. And as you can see, I can work this in, if this was an assembled motor, even on a car. If I can get in there from the things around it, it's really quite easy to retract that spring. And of course you can pull the brushes a little bit on the terminals, and there you have it. Now to remove a brush, I take my 5/16 inch nut driver, and again, you want to take some care to not drop the screw is your main issue if doing this in situ. But You want to remove you don't even have to take the bolt all the way out. These are forked. And so you simply loosen it and slide the fork out, and you've disconnected your brush. Now I can simply pull that brush out. My spring goes back in, but there's two brushes, and these are the solid type brushes. I'm going to take some new ones, and being very careful to observe that issue with the angle that they go at, and that is this direction. I'm going to take my spring retractor, retract my spring, and insert my brush very carefully, and put the spring back, and there I have my tab, and I'm going to loosen my screw just a little bit more to get it under there, and I securely seat that tab under that screw. Use my nut driver, my 5/16, to put that back on. And there you can see it. Here's my brush. It's in. It's being forced in by the spring. And I'm actually going to set that where, again, the spring is against the side of the brush. And I wouldn't do this if I was working on the motor, but that's so I can slip it back on to my commutator. And so that kind of holds the brush in position out. And let's take another brush and my hook. Pull back the spring. Put in the brush. And this one I'll leave on the side. And take my tab and slip it under my bolt and tighten it down with a nut driver. Now these will go down a little bit when our brush goes fully in. So I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. This is, I don't have any of these brushes that do the brush wear indicator. And so I'm going to take a pair of dikes and cut those off here in a minute. And but we'll go do the other free one over here. Undo the tabs from the copper bar. I'm going to loosen that just a little bit so the new ones go on very easily. And in this case, I'm going to hold back the spring, pull out the old brush, put in the new brush, and leave the spring. Do the same thing over here. Thank you, brain. I got a pair of dikes to cut my little wires on the other sets. The telltale brushes that have the little shorting bar in them when you grind down to where it connects the two electrodes through the commutator. It gives us a shorted indication here on our brush wear indicator, and you could conceivably use all that to set you up a brush's wear light on your dash. No one in history has ever done it that we can find, and so it's not been a big issue. And so there's those brushes, again retracted for the moment. And these, I'm going to take our dikes, cut our wires to that. Let's take a brush and have it handy, and I will, oops, I forgot to loosen my 2 5/16 inch terminals. There's that. I'm going to pull that brush out. Put in the new one. And then it's important to get the radius end of this brush facing the same direction. Put it in the slot. Don't jam it in there if there's any resistance. You have to kind of work out what's going on there. Don't jam her in there. But we're just not having any problem with that here. And we can have that brush. And let's see here. We've got a couple more, and I have 2 more brushes. This is all part of God's plan. And these are tattletale brushes. Then I want to make sure I get the bias on the brush right. And so you can see our brushes and our springs. I'm going to further clip off all these wires from the device so that you could hook a thermistor or something in there, I suppose, to serve as a temperature thing. The area of most critical temperature on the motor is around the commutator. But there I've got all my brushes retracted, and so if I just wasn't upside down, they should slip right down over my commutator. And there they are. And now I take my hook and go around and let the spring go to the center of the brush between the connecting wires and hold the brush in place. With my little magic hook. And there we are. And that step, of course, you wouldn't even have to do if you did this on the motor. So it's you can actually do this on an assembled motor fairly easily. Again, the screws don't have to come out at all. You just have to loosen them until the tabs come free. And with the spring retractor, you can pull that back and pull the brush out. And so changing a set of brushes is not really, if you had them go out after 10,000 miles or 80,000 miles or 300,000 miles, the rebuild on your motor is a pretty minor, guys. That's the whole thing that there is to it, is change the brushes, and if brush wear is your only thing. Now, if you have to redo the commutator, you'll have to pull your motor and have the commutator turned, and that's probably a good idea when you're doing that. If I got a motor that had 80,000 miles on it and needed brushes, I would pull the motor, I'd have the commutator turned, everything inside inspected and cleaned off, and 2 new bearings put in it, and a new set of brushes, and put it back together and put it back in the car. I mean, it's not that big a deal. I would say the whole process there is in the $400 or $500 range. If you haven't let it go too far, too long, set and rust or anything like that. If it's simply operating, but you're down to kind of worn out brushes. And you can inspect these at any time, taking the shroud off, retracting that spring and pulling the brush out, and you can see the brush. And how much wear and so forth you have there. And so that's the whole process of changing the brushes if you want to upgrade to the H60s, which apparently will do better in a street car than the H49s that come with your Netgain. That said, George insists he's sold a lot of motors with the H49 brushes in them and has had no problem until this sudden spate of 3. And this is how that goes in the motor game. Recall about the time we had some clay bust loose on our 11 HV and burn up the motor. He had about 3 motors that did that the same week after not hearing of the problem for the previous 2 years. And so that's electric motors for you. It comes in 3s. So it doesn't have any particular meaning at all. But you can kind of feel, if I turn this way, which would be clockwise, I'm just kind of skipping along there, you can kind of hear that noise. But if I try to reverse it, there's a lot of resistance to that, and it just doesn't want to go that way. It will, I can force it, but it's a different sound and a different direction. And so I'd like you to take particular care in, if you're going to bench run these and seat them, that you have it wired up with your battery or charger and your cabling to where it turns counterclockwise drive end from the other end, or clockwise from this end, and so that they are properly seated in the right direction. If you seat them in the wrong direction and then go out and drive it the right direction, I suspect that could have a bad thing, because they are kind of aimed at the commutator a little bit off center and with, of course, a radius on the end of the brush. And so it doesn't strike me as being a good idea to run them backwards when running them in. And so that's the sort of thing we're looking at there. So that's our brushes. We've replaced our H49 solid blocks on our Warp 9 here with a set that George graciously provided us of the H60s with the red top split brushes. And that should let us do 190, 200, 210 volts on this motor very safely and with minimal arcing. and have longer brush wear at using the kind of driving regime you would find in an EV. Now, if you're let's say you're going to use this in an electric boat and run it at 500 amps continuously until you burn out the motor, you're back to the H49s. They have another version, the K234s, which is a softer brush, beautiful filming, but limited to 150 volts, and probably not the life of the H60s, but they do a marvelous job in golf carts and forklifts and so forth like that, pumps and things. So in low voltage applications, they're actually the preferred brush. So having the right brush for your application appears to be an important matter. Let's go take a look at our 11-inch motors and see what we can do about changing the brushes there. Let's talk about a couple of things. We have removed our shrouds here, and so you can see we have ready access to our brushes, which are the Hellwig split top brushes. We're going to have to be very careful to note, because I can't tell visually which ones we've changed and which ones we haven't, because they are the good brushes. But we've removed the shrouds so we can get access to them. And notice that that caused us to remove our Garrett XS turbos. This was a Garrett turbocharger that's been converted to electric drive. And we get these from a company called XS Turbos, and they are non-trivial, about $375. Why would we go to that expense? In the case of this motor, we actually don't have much in the way of fans, and that was because of our length restriction in the Cadillac, which we have just cleared. And Jim Husted put 2 motors on 1 shaft, removed the internal fans, and did that. But I would recommend this for any Netgain motor, and here's why. As I said, our heat area is of most interest is the commutator. And so that's where we want it to keep cool. Note that when the brushes are wearing, they give off graphite particles, carbon dust. And that itself can lead to arcing and problems. And so we need some airflow through there to keep from building up carbon dust. If we can keep it flowing, it'll blow it out a particle at a time out our exhaust on this end as we're blowing in here. And so we get a flow of air directly over a rotating commutator. This thing will put out 434 cubic feet per minute of air. It's actually quite a blower. Now it does take 8 or 10 amps of DC current to do that, but we think it's well worth it. The other aspect of that is we have a, what's this called, K&N or K&R? K&N filter. This is an air filter much as you would use on a car. And in fact, XS Turbos does this as a little supercharger, electric supercharger for cars that you hook up with a tube or a hose or something to your intake, and this then becomes your air filter. Much like the internal combustion engine, if I get a road grit, sand, dust, that sort of thing in this intake, and I have to have either a screen or this shroud with the thing. If I have this just screened and I go drive on the beach and get sand in it, holy smoke, what this does to your brushes and your commutator, you don't even want to think about. And so dirty air is worse than no air, and no air is not good. And so we want to blow cooling air on there to cool the commutator, clear the natural effluent of graphite particles given off by the brushes, and we want a filter to keep things out of that process. And so we really like these admittedly expensive blowers for the motor, and they cause kind of some installation problems in that they stick up and so forth. But they look kind of cool, and they sound kind of cool, and so I like them. And so you want to have something like that. I would recommend for any of these commutated motors. You need to have an air filter and a source of cooling air that's fairly persuasive, particularly in a non-water-cooled motor. And so that's what we've got going on there. Here is our virtually new brushes and springs and so forth. And this is going to be a fairly easy change. I'll show it to you. We will loosen our terminal screw, and this one actually has slots for a screwdriver, but I still like using the nut driver, and we'll just go ahead and disconnect both of these, and that lets me reach in with my retractor and I can retract that spring right out of the way, pull that out. My long side is down. Let's put this in the same way. Again, be careful not to. And I'm just going to put that all the way in and with the spring right back on top. Holy smoke, this doesn't have the fork. What are they sending me, Brian? They're all that way. This is going to make it much more difficult. But Hellwig has sent me brushes that don't have the fork on it. They have a closed loop, and we're going to have to remove the nut, the screw completely, and that's going to vastly complicate our installation procedure. Thank you, Tom. But we will persevere. Let's see if this can be made to work. You know, I wasn't even part of the great NASA layoff, so and this this goes on there, so we're good. You just have to be careful with that nut. That it's actually a screw that threads into that copper bar. And it does give me a way to tell the brushes apart, so I can tell what I've done. Again, I put my retractor in, retract the spring, pull the brush alongside down. I can do that. Slide the brush in, put the spring in position. I'm going to have to remove the screw carefully. I don't want to drop this down in the motor, but the way I've got this set up, it would pretty much fall through to the bottom anyway. But then it goes to the floor, and the problem with that is my age and flexibility. If I drop something on the floor, I pretty much got to buy another one. It's sort of lost to me. I can actually get down to get it. The problem is I can't get back up. I have to get everybody from the shop to come help me get back on my feet. And that's embarrassing. So generally, if I drop something on the floor, we just buy another one. I've actually got a concrete ramp over there. If it's something really important, I can sweep it over there and sweep it up that ramp and then get it up to waist level and pick it up again. And I do have a magnetic thing that I can pick up a lot of things. So there's our spring. I want to get that centered on there. And this is our, I've changed two brushes right there. They're gone. Here, I can do it again. Let's do two more. This is like magic. Not hard work. Government people could do this. It's so easy. This time, I'm actually going to pull both the screws first, since we know they're going to have to come out. There's one. And it actually is big enough space you can just reach in there and twirl them out. You've got enough room to work on it here, really. Let me take my spring retractor. Along the side to the bottom. I don't know quite what George is talking about with his bent screwdriver, but I got to tell you, this hook just is, I think this is off the wall at Napa or something. It's perfect for this. Just not a problem. Thread that in, get it started by hand. Make sure I've got it properly cross-threaded. So Brian will have something to do later. Take my nut driver, 5/16. Tighten them down good. This is kind of like battery connections too, and you don't want these coming loose. I tell you what we'll do on the rest of them, and I'm going to go back and do it on these. We're going to find us some Nord-Lock washers and replace these little flat washers with some Nord-Locks. That'll keep those from vibrating loose or backing out. And I think that'd be a little improvement on it. I've gotten where I just use those Nord-Lock washers on everything. I am such a fan of those. We've just ceased having nuts and bolts back off from vibration and from thermal cycling. And here's another perfect example where vibration and thermal cycling are going to be the order of the day. As often happens on EVTV, we're kind of doing this on the run. I suppose I could edit it out and look a lot smarter, but I had a thought about Nord-Lock washers when I was showing you this. I went and dug out a pack of our number 10 M5 carbon steel Nord-Lock bolt securing system. And it's a perfect fit on these little screws. So I'm going to replace that flat washer and understand we're removing the flat washer because the Nord-Lock operates on the principle of digging in. It's a lot harder than either our screw or our terminal here. And when I tighten this down, those hard teeth are going to dig in to that brush terminal and that screw. I'm going to come on down on it. And now, if I went to loosen this, it would be quite difficult because we have to overcome the cam that is between the two parts of this Nord-Lock washer. These are zinc coated, which decreases, it serves as a sacrificial anode in the galvanic action of the two different metals, the tinned copper of the brush and the pure copper of the terminal bar here. And so that will work. But the most important thing is, no matter how you heat that bar and cool it alternately 10 million times, and no matter how much vibration you have from a motor going up to 5,000 RPM, and again, we're going to discard this flat washer and not use it. And so this Nord-Lock washer goes between the head and the tinned copper terminal. And I get that threaded into the bar. Or cross-threaded, depending on the dexterity of my old fat fingers, which is not a problem because Brian can always tap this out and redo it, which he does a lot of. And again, my 5/16 inch nut driver makes this pretty easy work. And I'm going to tighten that down. And I would bet that's not going to back off now. And it's going to be less subject to corrosion. And we've just improved, even Jim Husted's improved version of the Netgain motor, which was already pretty good. And so I would recommend, if you change the brushes, to put those Nordlocks on there in place of the flat washer. I think that's a good play. And I can kind of, you know, wiggle this and check that the brush moves up and down freely and rides on that commutator. I can tell you, even after running this quite a bit, we had very little in the way of patina on that commutator. It's very bright, and that's kind of discouraging. Worse, we said, yeah, this is a whole different part number. The H49s is 96621117-670-2-01. But in any event, I don't see it. Yeah, this is 674-3-02 is the dash 60s. And so these brushes are hardly worn. They're not even entirely seated. You can see some streaks on it. The good news is on the H60s is they're harder, they're stronger, they have a lower coefficient of friction, and they'll last a lot longer, and they put down a better line of film. The bad news is they take longer to seat. And we had run this motor set 3 days, really all day, seating them, and they'd gotten very quiet. Oh, and the H60s are noisier when they're not seated. And so we're going to have a very loud motor and have to go through that again before we can install our motors in the Cadillac Escalade. But it, I believe, is a much better time to do this change / upgrade on the recommendation of Tom Brunka of Hellwig and George Hamstra at Netgain. They're unanimous that this is a good and desirable change for this project. It's a much better to do it now on the bench, as you can see how easy it is to gain access to this than it would be to put this in a car, run out of brush in 1,000 miles and have to do it again. The other thing I'm a little uneasy about, now we didn't do this here at the motor, but they're very taken with the idea that silicon vapors of any kind are very damaging to these brushes. And if you recall, we've been pouring silicon molds, silicon rubber molds here in the facility. Now, that inevitably there's some vapors here. I would say over here at this motor, they were pretty microscopic, and we were never turning the motor when we were doing that at all. But still, and all, it's not hurting my feelings to change these now that we're getting into the actual installation of the motor. And so we'll put in these H60s. We'll use Nordlock washers to fasten the terminals, and I'll feel a lot better anyway as we put this into the car. Back to you, Chet.
Well, there, see, we're vindicated. We haven't been doing too much, but we really have. Yeah. It's,
and I think it's a good time to talk about brushes. And it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, last time we really talked about it was at the show.
Netgain is what Netgain is. They're a race car.
Yeah, right. That was their
we're the
original
ones
purpose.
that repurposed them to drive, Escalades.
Escalades and little Porsche replicas.
And they cannot do motors where you request brushes.
That is kind of strange, but I guess. Yeah.
Well, no, they
got one set of brushes.
They do a run of 300 or 400.
Yeah, that's true. They just pop in, and they send in the brushes.
It's put on a big set of shelves at Warfield. George doesn't have these in his bedroom.
No, they're stacked up in his front room in his trailer.
And so he manages orders to his dealers that are drop shipped directly from Warfield's factory. And they don't have an inventory system to have different kinds of brushes. That would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Now you, for your application, may want to swap brushes.
Yeah.
And that's doable.
Some good info, yeah.
And I think George or his dealers could probably stock brushes.
Right. And you just have to put them in.
Or you could get them from Hellwig. And putting them in is not that big a deal.
No.
Silicon vapors. What is the magic with silicon vapors and Tom Brunca and the brushes? Well, he finally explained it. The brushes at their surface generate an intense amount of heat from the arcing.
Oh, okay. I bet they do, yeah.
Silicon vapors from silicon RTV or silicon rubber, or release agents, that sort of thing. In the presence of the arcing, if you get silicon vapors on that, it fuses the silicon by the heat into silicon carbide.
Oh, so you get a little
silicon carbide right now is one of the most promising semiconductors, actually a disruptive technology in the area of MOSFETs and IGBTs. This is what's going to cause truly high power MOSFETs is silicon carbide. It's also probably one of the most abrasive substances on the planet. Really good sandpaper is made of silicon carbide.
That's right, silicon carbide sandpaper. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so what you've done is
converted
the surface of your brush,
nice smooth
just
surface
where it
of your
meets
brush.
the commutator.
Yeah, right. Nice smooth place.
Into a very, very hard, which is why it's one of the most abrasive substances. It's almost a diamond.
Oh, jeez.
And you've basically
put it on the end of
it's past carborundum.
Yeah, that's right.
And so you've converted your brush into a carborundum wheel.
Yeah, that's right, into a big piece of silicon sandpaper. So, jeez.
And now it is scoring great gouges out of your commutator and throwing off pieces of the end of the brush.
Catastrophic.
Now, by the time all that wears away out of the surface of the silicon vapors, the commutator is now a gravel pit.
I was just going to say it's got to be pitted really
and
bad.
now it's just tearing off chunks of brush left and right.
Oh, man.
And you have days, if not minutes, of brush life.
Oh, man.
And so silicon vapors around this motor, certainly when it's running.
When it's running, yeah.
Is a very bad idea.
Yeah.
And really having silicon vapors around it at all is kind of a problem. So I don't think we've looked at the brushes. We were pulling off the 11-inch and we're not.
They seem to be fine.
Yeah, they seem to be fine. We're putting in the new H60s and we're going to install that in the car. I'm not sure what has caused the reports of the very micro life brushes but you know, these things come up and there's manufacturing defects sometimes. We actually Tom offered us a set of brushes and we received them, all 15 of them.
Yes, our test brushes.
Of course, we have 8 in each of the motors.
Yeah, that's
for a total of 15.
15, right? Yeah. 16?
16. 16.
We kept
call Tom and see what I need.
we kept.
And so he's kind of embarrassed, but it's all American companies struggle with getting the right number of things in the box.
In the box, except Amazon.com.
And except Amazon.com. Only Chinese companies at Amazon.com can actually manage inventory and shipping. And I mean, you know, we're right with it. Brian sent Peter McWade 2.
Oh yeah, the meters twice. I sent it to him twice. Yeah.
So he's got 2 of them.
Yeah.
I told him to pick the one he liked.
That's why I talked to him on the phone the other day. He sent it back.
And so there you go.
Yeah, I have a hard time counting too. Sometimes number of Nordlock washers.
I spent a week talking to a guy back and forth in by email in Malta. About 55 millimeter straps.
Yeah.
And was sure I had them. Completely confused that my lack of 55 millimeter straps, or my having 55 millimeter straps that wouldn't fit our batteries, is what led to me using the 67.5s, which led to me buying a 4 Brazilian of the 70 millimeters, so they would sell me the build for me the 67.
That's how all this started, really, with the straps.
And that's how we got in the strap business.
Yeah, we just had so many.
So I've got 67.5. I don't have any of the 55s. We
cut them all up to use
put them on the thing. And
then, to get the pack started. Yeah.
Oh, man. And so there we go. We're not any good at shipping this stuff either.
I know, we're learning too.
Well, I call it Cape Girardeau restaurant rules apply, and that means you order whatever you want, eat whatever they bring.
Yeah, because you're hungry. What the hell?
So order whatever you like from us. And
we'll ship you something. Just call us.
And you should be happy with it. Right. It's the American way.
Well, we're at least good at it. We know that it's going to be wrong, so we don't get upset.
Right.
All right.
If you don't, it's all good.
That's right. We'll send you whatever the hell you need.
That ought to be about a week's worth of EVTV, maybe 2.
I think so. We got a lot of stuff.
We'll see you guys later.
All right. Signing off.